It's actually chapter 7. It's kind of an interesting time. Uh, Girls tend to get taller and boys stay about the same, so girls suddenly pass them. It's really kind of fascinating. So let's go ahead and get started. Middle childhood, chapter 7. Height and weight, growth in height and weight during middle childhood slows considerably. African American boys and girls tend to grow faster than white children. The body's failure to produce enough growth hormone leads to a growth deficiency. Growth deficiency in this case is a stature below 5 feet, and this isn't all that common, but it does occur sometimes. Girls and boys remain the same size for most of middle schoolhood, but girls will begin their prepubertal growth spurt 2 years before boys about age 9. It will take boys until their adolescence to catch up with the girls of the same age. It makes for some strange dancing at preteen dances, of course, and as you can see. Acceptance by peers at this age is often predicated on external appearance and physical competence. Both boys and girls often use advanced maturity as a criteria for selecting friends and leaders. Greater muscle development as the child ages leads to more and more physical activity. Children will develop bilateral coordination, strength, flexibility, impulsion, speed, precision, balance, and rhythm. Most children at this age try different sports. Most sports give the child an opportunity to develop specific sports skills and life skills that can be applied to everyday life. Sports helps the child develop their competence, their character, their connection, and their caring, hopefully. There's the captain right there. He's got the captain's armband on. Children need an average 2,400 calories every day. Breakfast should supply about 25% of the child's total daily calories. Nutritionists recommend plenty of grains, fruits, and vegetables, which are high in natural nutrients. U.S. children tend to eat too much fat, sugar, and low nutrient foods. 17% of school-aged children are considered obese. Results in research studies have shown that better nourished children are more energetic, less anxious, show more positive emotion, score higher than malnourished children score on a wide range of cognitive measures in middle childhood. Here's a child who was starving to death, and here he is after they fed him and gave him a haircut. Rates of asthma, a chronic illness of the lungs characterized by wheezing, coughing, and shortness of breath, are highest in middle childhood. Children who are at the highest risk of developing asthma are boys, had low birth weight, have parents who smoke, are poor, and obese. Asthma may be higher in developed countries because of home interiors and extreme cleanliness. However, in developing countries, air pollution may be the biggest contributor. And right now, you guys probably don't have it, but we've got haze coming down. We've got smoke coming down from Canada, the forest fires in Canada, and it's pretty hazy, pretty smoky. It, it looks like fog. It's so thick. African American children are at a greater risk than other children in the United States for developing asthma, but their parents seem to be the most responsive in creating an environment that avoids asthma triggers. Maintaining health and fitness. Exercise promotes health and fitness. Participation in a variety of competitive and recreational sports, for example, tennis, bowling, leads to a lifetime fitness regimen. 15% of boys and 26% of girls do not exercise 3 times a week where they breathe hard or sweat. Nothing worse than sweating. Vision and hearing problems. Most children in middle childhood have keener vision than when they were younger. Almost 13% of children under 18 can't see at all or have impaired vision. 13%. About 15% of 6 to 19-year-olds, mostly boys, have some hearing loss. And there you go. That's one of the reasons why men hear so poorly. There is a sharp increase in the incidence of myopia in middle childhood. That's a form of nearsightedness. Children, especially in developing countries, tend to have increasing eyesight problems due to poor lighting and an increase in the need to read and write. Two factors leading to poor eyesight in today's culture: genetic predisposition for eyesight problems and increased use of phones and computers. 25% of children need glasses. 25%, one out of every four. Injuries increase between ages 5 and 14, as in early childhood, accidental injuries are the leading cause of death. Parents and children themselves tend to overestimate their safety skills. Protective headgear lowers injuries in activities such as football, roller skating, etc. Boys have far more accidents than girls because boys tend to be far more adventurous and do more physical things, like knock their heads off, it looks like. And as you can see, he cut his head open and they stapled it back together. 1 in 10 children at this age range suffers from serious emotional disturbances. 13% suffer from anxiety disorders, 2% suffer from severe depression, 5% suffer ADHD, 1 to 4% suffer from conduct disorder, 0.5% suffer from schizophrenia. Oppositional defiant disorder, also known as ODD, is a pattern of behavior where the child is uncooperative and hostile toward authority figures. For ODD to be diagnosed, the behavior must interfere with the child's daily life. 15% of school-age children struggle with ODD, but most grow out of it before they are diagnosed with the more severe conduct disorder. ODD is often comorbid with ADHD, learning disabilities, anxiety disorder, or mood disorders. The concrete operational stage runs from ages 7 to 11 and usually introduces the child to more complex mental operations that will initiate the child into the world of academia. Cognitive advances, understanding of spatial relationships better. They understand seriation, which means a child can arrange objects in a series based on one or more dimensions, such as weight, lightest to heaviest, or color. They understand the principle of identity, which is part of conservation. Reversibility, classification understanding to reverse classifications. Subtraction becomes possible. Horizontal décollage, they master ideas of conservation of different items of different ages, at different ages, volumes of liquids, solid measures, and numbers. Children in middle childhood become better at dealing with organization. They understand that there is a difference between a whole and the sum of its parts. This is known as class inclusion. The individual also understands seriation, or the ability to scale objects according to dimensions. And of course, this child is arranging these pegs by height. Efficiency of mental operations is based on an individual's ability to encode, store, and retrieve information. One question is how much information children can handle at a given time. And this is something that teachers argue about all the time. How much information can I give them? Can I just lecture them all day like they do in Japan and China? Or do I have to break everything up into smaller increments? How quickly and accurately can they process the information? Metamemory is understanding the process of memory. Information is gathered from our senses and our sensory register and filtered to determine which information the individual is going to allow into their thought processes. Most of our thought takes place in our working memory. The working memory can only hold a limited number of items for a limited period of time. Learning information must take place in a form of permanent storage, the long-term memory. Sir, is the stuff we learned in this experiment supposed to go into our long or short-term memory? When children first start school, they have to develop the ability to tune out distracting stimulation and focus on particular tasks. This is known as selective attention. A second grader may have trouble concentrating on a task if there is music playing, but by the sixth grade, the child won't be bothered by the music. When a child starts school, they begin organizing their recurring processes in their memories as scripts that they can repeat when needed. Toothbrushing script, the button close script, zipping up clothes script, tying shoes script, sitting quietly when at school script, doing math at math time script. Most people think that they live in Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and the children are above average. At least that is how parents think of their children. That is why intelligence tests are tolerated in the United States, because we all have geniuses for children. The significant rise in IQ scores during the 20th century is known as the Flynn effect. And this is Flynn right here, or James Flynn. That picture is James Flynn. In 1999, James Flynn recognized that the median IQ score had increased from 1,932 from 1932 until 1997 by as much as 20 points. And that's 65 years. I can do the math. The rise is thought to be from environmental causes such as better prenatal care, smaller families with fewer children competing for resources, attending preschool, and even watching educational children's programming. But the most likely and influential reason for the rise in IQ score is the decline of infectious diseases, which drains the body of energy that is needed for physical and cognitive growth. In 1932, we didn't have any inoculations against anything. So everybody came down with the measles, mumps, and chickenpox. Sometimes they came down with whooping cough. They had the measles, mumps, and chickenpox. They had those three diseases. They had fifth disease. They had all kinds of diseases. And now, of course, we inoculate against all of those. And not only that, the families do tend to be smaller. And the kids aren't fighting for resources. We have better food than we did then. We have more food than we did then. If you remember 1932, right in the middle of the Depression. So, wow, of course it's going to go up. The field of writing psychological measures is known as psychometrics, and the people who specialize in developing psychological tests are called psychometricians. Psychometricians from the past have developed tests for studying many areas of psychology, but the most controversial tests have been the tests that measure intelligence. In 1983, Howard Gardner of Harvard University began expanding our understanding of intelligence. Gardner felt that intelligence came in many forms. Linguistic intelligence, knowing the meaning of words, having the ability to use words to understand new ideas, and using language to convey ideas to others. This would be a writer. This is my wife who could spell and I can't. Which could be either a good or bad thing. The Billy Joel music staff, it looks like, to kink in. I don't know. I'll have to read that sometime. Anyway, there you go. Linguistic intelligence. Logical mathematical intelligence, understanding relations that exist among objects, actions, and ideas, as well as the logical mathematical operations that can be performed on them. Spatial intelligence, perceiving objects accurately and imaging in the mind's eye, the appearance of an object before and after it has been transformed. Musical intelligence, comprehending and producing sounds varying in pitch, rhythm, and emotional tone. My brother-in-law has this type of intelligence. He can hear a piece of music and he can play it without reading the music. I don't think he can read music, actually. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence, using one's body in highly differentiated ways as dancers, craftspeople, and athletes do. And of course, that would be any type of athletics. Interpersonal intelligence, and identifying different feelings, moods, and motivations and intentions in others. Intrapersonal intelligence, understanding one's emotions and knowing one's strengths and weaknesses. In 1999, Gardner added naturalistic intelligence, recognizing and distinguishing among members of a group of species and describing relations between such groups. Naturalistic intelligence. Gardner's latest addition to his intelligences was existential intelligence in 2002, considering ultimate issues such as the purpose of life and the nature of death. Gardner based much of his theorizing on the research being done with savants, individuals with mental deficits who showed extreme intelligence in one or more domains. And I'm going to show you two savants right now, I think. Yes, I am.
Qatar Airways, taking you on a journey with Quest.
The Public Library in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's often said that the mind works in mysterious ways. In the case of 55-year-old Kim Peek, this is truer than most. He's the world's most famous savant, a confounding mix of mental disability and brilliance.
My zip code, where I used to live, was 10003. Where is that apartment?
Lower East Side. Lower East Side.
My office is at 30303. Where is that?
Atlanta.
Kim's remarkable brain became the real-life inspiration for the character of Raymond Babbitt in the movie Raymond.
Carrie Gibbs with Seth. 461 0192.
How did you know my phone number?
So you the telephone book last night with Sally. 461 0192.
It's a role that earned Dustin Hoffman an Oscar and brought worldwide attention to the phenomenon of the so-called idiot savant.
Destin walked up to Kim after he'd spent about 6 hours with us in Hollywood. And he touched noses with him, and he says, Kim, I may be the star, but you're the heavens.
I was born on March the 9th, 1962.
It's a Friday.
Kim was born with severe brain damage, but with his disability came an astonishing gift, a photographic memory. Like other savants, the mechanism of his condition is poorly understood.
Kim's brain, no left brain, no right brain. He has one hemisphere, doesn't have any separation, and total absence to the corpus callosum, which has to be a filtering system. And he has no filtering system, so instead of 45% to 50%, that yours and my brain keeps, he keeps in about 98%.
Against all the odds, Kim Peek learned to read. Books and the unquenchable thirst for knowledge came to dominate his world.
Last president of the Soviet Union was who?
Gorbachev.
Longest serving leader of the Soviet Union.
Stalin.
Oh, this is hard. Identify the famous son of Pepin the Short.
Garlemald.
The City Library is Kim Peek's second home, and for good reason. He's already read about 9,000 books. Luckily, the library has 600,000, so it should keep him busy for some time to come.
Okay, one of the things about what we were talking about, they refer to them one way to refer to these savants is idiot savant. And the reason they call them idiot savants is because they they can only function in one specific area. And of course, they're geniuses. They can remember almost everything from that in whatever area of genius they have. Otherwise, they're fairly non-functional. As he was saying, he had severe disabilities, has no corpus callosum, so operating normally in society would be impossible for him, but he can remember everything. Just because you're smart doesn't mean that you can function completely. Wait a minute, I'm going to get an advertisement, unfortunately.
AG1 gives you the daily nutrients that form the foundation for your health routine. It's
And
made.
there we go.
When Derek Paravicini is playing the piano, it's hard to believe there's anything he can't do. And yet, when you meet him away from the keyboard, as we first did in London 6 years ago, the contrast is shocking.
Can you hold up 3 fingers for me?
I can do that.
Can you hold up 3?
I don't know how to do it.
You want me to show you 3?
Yes, please,
Okay.
yes.
Derek is a musical savant, blessed with an island of extreme talent in a sea of profound disability. Derek was excited to show us the skills that make him so exceptional. His ability to instantly call up any piece of music he has ever heard, like YMCA.
Can you play that
I
one?
can play YMCA.
And I asked him to play a show tune. But it isn't just that Derek remembers them. He can transform them effortlessly and seamlessly into the styles of different musicians, like jazz greats.
Switch to Oscar Peterson. How's about Dave Brubeck?
It's like he's got libraries of pieces and styles in his head.
Adam Ockelford is Derek's teacher.
He can just whip out a piece book and a style book and just bring them together and it just kind of explodes.
There you go. I think that's it, isn't it? Yes. Okay, so we saw a genius and we saw a musical savant. Children will have a fairly extensive vocabulary by the time they begin school. School will allow them to use language to analyze, study, and understand language, and this is known as metalinguistic awareness. Children will begin using figurative language forms as they delve deeper and deeper into academics. Similes, proverbs, idioms, metaphors. Some elementary schools offer a second language, which includes proper grammar as well as vocabulary, and this is known as school bilingualism. Children usually learn to read when they enter school at age 6 or 7. Reading requires direct instructions and the ability to learn symbols and understand meanings. The two main approaches to reading are phonics and whole language. The phonics approach advocates teaching children to read by breaking down wording into their sound components and then putting them together into words. For the whole language approach, the emphasis should be on the meaning of the written language in whole passages so that children can guess at the meaning of words based on the context. And actually, this all started when I was in elementary school. So when I was a first grader, they taught us they were trying to teach us how to read the whole word. They started using phonics in the early to middle 1950s, and I have a brother and a sister they kind of have dyslexia. They don't really, but they have a difficult time using the whole word method. To the extent that my sister won't read at all now because reading has always been so hard on her. But eventually they taught her how to read, how to use phonics, and of course she used the phonics to get through school. But then she decided, no more academia for me, even though she has a relatively high IQ in the 130s. But of course, when I was in school, we started out with the whole language method. And if you could use that, then they put you in one group. And if you couldn't use that, then they put you in another group. If you kind of switch back and forth, they put you in the middle group. And in the they called us bluebirds, redbirds, and yellowbirds. And actually we read out of different books. So the bluebirds read whole word method, the redbirds read in using both methods, and then the people that couldn't use whole word were in the yellowbird books. As weird as that sounds. Anyway, so this all started in elementary school back in the 50s. The approach that works best appears to be a combination of the two approaches, beginning with phonics and later supplementing with a whole language approach. And actually, we did it the other way around. We used the whole word approach, and if we couldn't pronounce a word, then we used phonics. That's the bluebird method. The redbird method was doing what they're talking about. And then, of course, the yellowbirds eventually came up to the redbird level. Most children become able readers by the 3rd grade, but some suffer from a condition such as dyslexia, which includes difficulty sounding out letters, difficulty learning to spell words, and a tendency to misperceive the order of letters in words. Other children have difficulty reading due to a range of learning disabilities, which are cognitive disorders that impede the development of learning a specific skill, such as reading or math. And of course, this is somebody normal, and this is somebody with dyslexia. It just doesn't go together. Positive effects of peer relations. They develop skills needed for sociability and intimacy. They enhance relationships. They gain a sense of belonging. It helps them make independent judgments. And here's two teams. It looks like they both came in this first or something. Anyway, this team has shirts, and this team that didn't have shirts. But the people on this team are taller, aren't they? That's interesting. I wonder what it was. Pictures. Negative effects of peer relations. A child is expected to accept a group's values and behavioral norms, even if understandable, and children may not. I'm sorry, even if undesirable. Geez, I must have dyslexia. Even if undesirable, and children may not be able to resist. The peer group may reinforce prejudice, and of course that's not good. And of course we're talking about these kids, so they're the ones that are doing things that are fairly undesirable. One of them has the idea, the rest of them have to follow. That's the negative aspect of peer relations. School-age children develop an organizational order with the peer groups that develop a social hierarchy. This ranking is based on how much a child is disliked or liked or disliked by others. Children will construct their own self-image and self-concept on how they are treated by their peers. Most school-age children consider themselves average in their ratings to others. Most children are well aware who are the neglected and rejected children in their peer group. Popularity, peer relationships in middle childhood leads to later social adjustment. Popular children have good cognitive abilities, are high achievers, are good at solving social problems, help other children, are assertive without being disruptive or aggressive. And if you look at this picture, it's a really fascinating picture, because the dominant people in this picture are this guy with the knee pads on and this fellow right here. If you notice, everybody else, he's looking at him, he's looking at the leaders, so is he, and he probably was, but now he's looking at the guy taking the picture. But this guy's performing for them. This guy's looking to see how they react, and so is this guy. So it's these two people are the leaders. Unpopularity. Children can be unpopular for many reasons. Overly aggressive, hyperactive, withdrawn. They act silly and immature. They act anxious and uncertain. They may be insensitive to others' feelings. They may not adapt well to new situations. They may show undue interest in the opposite sex. They may expect not to be liked. And of course, if this is the case, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They assume nobody's going to like them. Neglected children are those children who are ignored to the point of invisibility in their class. Neglected children often have trouble making friends due to unsureness in communication with peers and adults and high scores on inhibition. This makes it difficult for them to interact with peers and adults, and they don't develop the same social friendships skills as their peers. Other studies have found that less talkative children are viewed as less approachable by peers and are seen as less desirable social partners by the time they reach upper primary school grades. Many studies have found that this rejection is in part triggered by adults' responses to the child. Rejected is a term generally used to describe those children who are actively disliked by their peers. In sociometric observations, rejected children were those who received lots of negative and not many positive friendship nominations from their peers. There is some evidence to suggest that parenting styles, rather than berserk pituitary glands, have an influence on the development of children's friendship skills. Children that are hostile and aggressive in their approaches to peers have often had similar behavior modeled at home. Selman stages of friendship. Stage 0, age 3 to 7, momentary playmateship. Undifferentiated level of friendship. Children are egocentric and have difficulty considering another person's point of view. They only think about what they want from a relationship. Friends are defined by closeness, material attributes, and physical attributes. Sally Ann is Jilly's bestest friend as long as she does what Jilly wants her to do. Sally Ann has the prettiest clothes, so Jilly likes her. Sally Ann has a Powder Puff Girls game station game, so Jilly likes her more. Stage 1, age 4 to 9, one-way assistance. On this unilateral level, a good friend does what the child wants the friend to do. Doing things together is a momentary thing. Their friend tends to be whomever they are playing with at the time. Ginny likes Joy because Joy doesn't like purple, so they don't have to fight over Jeannie's favorite doll dresses. Sometimes Joy isn't Jeannie's friend because she won't play makeup with her mom's stuff. Stage 2, age 6 to 12, two-way fair weather cooperation. Friendship involves give and take, but it also serves separate self-interests rather than common mutual interest to both parties. Sharing is an important component. A friendship is more than being thrown together. Personalities have to mesh, must share ideas, feelings, and interests. Jeannie and Tia are always together. Sometimes they have little tiffs, and secretly Tia says that she would rather be best friends with Gloria, but Gloria is best friends with her next-door neighbor. Tia and Jeannie always find each other to make sure that neither one is alone. Stage 3, age 9 to 15, intimate, mutually shared relationships. Children now view friendship as having a life of its own. It is an ongoing, systematic, committed relationship that incorporates more than just doing things for each other. It is sometimes something treasured, and parties become possessive and often demand exclusivity. Girls tend to have one or two intimate friends. Boys have more, less intimate friends. So girls are better at friendship than boys are. Melissa and Maya have been friends since starting school, and they have grown into being best friends. They sometimes argue, but not for long. In the 6th grade, Maya started getting pressure from her community to find an Asian friend, but both girls made sure that this conflict did not end their friendship. Now they discuss clothes and boyfriends only with each other. Maya has Asian friends, but not friends she can discuss relationships with. Self-esteem. Erikson's 4th crisis begins as the child enters school and starts comparing themselves with their peers, and this is known as industry versus inferiority. That's the conflict. Conflict of competence is a task. A view of the self as able to master skills and complete tasks is the crisis resolution. Children rate physical appearance most important. Self-esteem is second in importance. Social acceptance is third. Social support from parents and classmates, friends, and teachers is also important. Divorce was very difficult throughout American history until the 1960s. People who should have divorced decades before suddenly saw light at the end of the tunnel. There was a glut of divorces that peaked in the 1980s. In the 1990s, nearly half of all North American children experienced their parents getting a divorce. This is very distressing for children. Almost all studies show that no matter what the age of the child, when their parents divorce, it is disruptive to their well-being. When the divorce laws in the United States were liberalized in the 1960s, the devastation for children was quite profound. As time went by, the impact on children lessened. It is speculated that this is because the prospect of divorce became more commonplace and society accepted this outcome. In the 1990s, the outcomes turned negative again as the incomes for single parents became lower. As the children age into adulthood, the products of divorced relationships tend to have more conflict in their own relationships and are more likely to end up in divorce. For the child, the first year after the divorce is the toughest, but by the second year, they tend to adjust to the new circumstance. Children adjust better to divorce if the parents can cooperate with one another, especially on disciplinary matters. Joint custody is the best outcome for the children, though this doesn't always occur. The absence of a role model and a source of parental support can lead to problems. Single parents tend to have economic problems that they didn't have when married. Conflict between parents is extremely distressing to the children involved. Many of the problems with divorce are seen in children who just experienced the conflict without the divorce. Which children are the most affected by divorce? The child who focuses on negative events will suffer greater trauma from a divorce. Children who can handle the threat of divorce will actually be stronger in the long run for dealing with the trauma. Parents can help their children adjust to divorce situations by not competing with each other. Criticizing their ex-spouse should never be done in front of their children. Children should never be used to mediate disputes between warring spouses. Between 1970 and 1996, the proportion of children under 18 years of age living with one parent grew from 12% to 28%. The rate of marriages is 0.40% per capita per year. The divorce rate is 0.41% per capita per year. So divorce rates are higher than marriage rates. Adjusting to divorce generally involves 6 tasks: acknowledging the reality of the marital rupture, disengaging from parental conflict and distress and resuming customary pursuits, resolving loss of the parent that they aren't living with, security and feeling loved and cared for by both parents, familiar daily routines, family traditions, resolving anger and self-blame, accepting the permanence of divorce, achieving realistic hope for their own intimate relationships. Children do better when the father pays child support. This shows that the father is more involved. The frequency of contact is not as important as the quality of the parent-child relationship. Children who do not enjoy a good relationship with their non-custodial father tend to have behavior problems. Influences on adjustment, age or maturity, gender, temperament, psychological and social adjustment. The parent must handle the following issues delicately: custody and visitation arrangements, finances, disorganization of household duties, reorganization of household duties, contact with the non-custodial parent, remarriage, child's relationship with a step-parent. Younger children are more anxious about divorce, have less realistic perceptions of what caused it, are more likely to blame themselves, may adapt more quickly than older children, fear abandonment and rejection. School-age children are sensitive to parental pressures and loyalty conflicts. They fear abandonment and rejection as well. Boys usually find it harder to adjust than girls do. This may depend largely on how involved the father is with the family. In most cases, the mother is awarded custody of the children. Total custodial mothers, 11,268,000. That's about 80% of all the custodial families. Total custodial fathers, 2,907,000, or about 20%. Custodial mothers who receive a support award, 79.6%. Custodial fathers who receive a support award, 29.9%. Non-custodial mothers who totally default on support, 46.9%. And non-custodial fathers who totally default on support is 26.9%. So as you can see, the deadbeat dad is about 1 out of every 4. Deadbeat moms, pretty close to half. Involvement of the non-custodial parent, the more recent the separation, the closer the father lives to his children. The higher the socioeconomic status, the more likely the father will be involved. The non-custodial father is more likely to lose contact if he has biological children from a new marriage. Non-custodial mothers keep twice as much contact as non-custodial fathers and are less likely to break contact after remarriage. And of course, this didn't happen in my kid's case. The number of single-parent families has quadrupled since 1960. A child today has at least a 50% chance of living with only one parent at some time. In 1998, one-parent families comprised almost 1/3 of all U.S. families with children under 18. Unwed mothers create more single-parent families than divorce. 1 out of every 3 children born is born to an unwed mother. In 1998, 4 out of 10 children who lived with a single mother lived with a mother who had never been married. In 2004, over a quarter of births to women ages 25 to 29, 27.8%, and over half of births to women ages 20 to 24, 54.8%, were unmarried women. Birth rates for unmarried women, 52.5 births per 1,000, unmarried women aged 15 to 44. Percent of all births to unmarried women, about 41%. In 2020, the state with the highest percentage of births to teenagers was Mississippi, with 54.2%. The state with the lowest was Utah, with 19.2%. Arizona had a percentage of 45.2%. New Mexico had a percentage of 51.5%. 75% of divorced mothers and 80% of divorced fathers remarry. 86% of children in remarriages live with their biological mother and stepfather. Sometimes loyalty to the absent parent interferes with forming ties to the step-parent. The more children involved, the more difficult the adjustment. Boys seem to do better in step-parent situations than in single-mother situations. Girls do worse in stepfather with a new stepfather and have a harder time adjusting. Most children adjust reasonably well. Children of divorce are twice as likely to drop out of school, more likely to marry young and develop an unstable, unsatisfying relationship. Children from fatherless homes account for 63% of youth suicides, 71% of teenage pregnancies, 90% of all homeless and runaway children, 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions, 85% of all children that exhibit behavioral disorders, 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger, 71% of all high school dropouts, 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers, 85% of all youth sitting in prison. Now, the 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger is really kind of interesting because if you think about it, one of the reasons why they have displaced anger is because they are being bossed around by their mother and not by their father. So that creates displaced anger. So in reality, the anger isn't toward the individual that they're raping. It's toward their own mother. Less than amicable split. Divorce, she got half. When a single mother remarries, there are some interesting problems. Boys benefit from having a father figure around. Girls tend to adjust poorly because of the disruption of their relationship with their mother. Adolescents tend to challenge the new step-parent. When the father is a custodial parent and he remarries, he has problems as well. Often fathers are awarded custody of a male child because they are already having problems. Males adjust poorly to the new relationship because they have lost the exclusive attention of their father. Girls tend to do better. Over time, things tend to work out in blended families. Unfortunately, second marriages have a greater probability of ending in divorce. Then the children just have to go through the same traumas again. Bullying may be defined as a systematic abuse of power, relationships, and social groups. Over the past 2 decades, research has shown that bullying is a serious problem that has far-reaching effects on both the perpetrators and the victims. The short-term effects of bullying can be quite dramatic. Research has shown that low self-esteem and stress due to bullying can lead to problems with concentration and problem solving. Research also indicates that students who were bullied were more likely to skip school, found it difficult to sleep, and felt ill. Long-term problems that can arise from exposure to bullying include low self-esteem, depressive disorders, difficulty in establishing and maintaining relationships with the opposite sex, in extreme cases, death by suicide. The bully, on the other hand, has a greater likelihood of going on to commit more serious crimes later in life, because for him there are no consequences. And that is it. So I'll talk to you guys next week.